I'm glad to have with me today Araz Salek. It's really my pleasure to have him here for a discussion. Hi, Araz.
Hi, Fadel. Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for making the time and the opportunity to talk and discuss very interesting subjects.
My pleasure, by all
Yeah.
means, yes.
So we will start first with your biography.
Sure. I started playing guitar at a very early age. I was exposed through my uncle, who became my first teacher. He started playing guitar, and he continued that. And I believe it was the same year that he started taking guitar lessons. He actually started teaching me as well. So he would take lessons and he would come teach me every week as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was at eight or nine, and he also knew a luthier in Tehran, and he made a guitar that was small. It was probably 2/3 of a regular size, maybe half the size of a regular guitar, and it was so I could start playing. I couldn't hold a regular size guitar. So he made a smaller one. In countries like Turkey, they have this jura saz, which is basically the small saz. It's something that they play regularly and they make regularly. But smaller size guitar wasn't actually anything usual. There were not many of them. There were some made in the past, but there weren't really many of them. So he was nice enough. He made me a guitar and he started teaching me every week. And I studied with him quite a bit. I studied with him. I played the elementary books, and then we moved on to even to some Radifs. So it was, it was really nice to start with someone that you love, someone that you know, and who's so supportive. As a kid, it's not easy to start playing music. You want to go play in the street. So my uncle did a good job in making sure that we stick to the schedule every week, and every week we have our classes and our lessons. He was very patient with me, very patient. So he helped me a lot. And then from there, I moved on to studying with Ustad Hushang Zarif, who passed away a few months ago. Unfortunately, he was a wonderful guitar player, fantastic guitar player, and a brilliant teacher too. Many of the guitar players, even generations much before me, they started, or at some point of their studies, they actually took lessons with Hushang Zarif. I stayed with him for quite a few years, 4 or 5 years. He was a fantastic teacher, and I played with him Radif Musa Khan and a bit of Radif Ali Shahnazi, and a lot of the compositions of Ustad Waziri, Ali Naqi Waziri, along with other pieces, his own compositions and other pieces that he had in his repertoire to teach students. He had many students. Like the days that I would go to to take my lessons, it was all one-on-one, like one-on-one lessons. I think he would teach about 50 students a day. So he had many students. So I guess at some point he trusted me with some of his more with some of his beginner students, and he trusted me with to teach them. I would just go there a little bit earlier, and he would ask me to teach some of his students in a classroom next door. So that's how I started, and then I moved to Arshat Tahmosabi, who I really consider my main teacher. the one who really taught me the artistic merits of of the music that I play, and he was such a he still is fortunately he still is living. He's actually presenting workshops, and hopefully at some day he will present workshops at Labyrinth too. So Arshad Mossavi is an author of many books. He gathered many of the compositions of many of the composers that people didn't really play that much. He put them together. He published them as books, and now they're widely played in all the music schools and everything. So he had this really important role of kind of gathering the repertoire and publishing them. He was quite successful in that. So I studied with him 4 years. I studied with him Radif Mirza Abdullah again. I studied with him Radif Awazi, which is the singing, the vocal Radif of Ustad Dawami. And I played a lot of pieces, from all the books that he published, from the older composers to the contemporary composers. Hossein Ali Zadeh, he was a student of Hossein Ali Zadeh. And Lutfi, and he basically taught us all those, plus his own compositions. He also has some really wonderful compositions. So these are my main 3 teachers that I studied with in Iran.
Yeah, so if we look at the periods, Araz, like first teacher, second teacher, third teacher, how many months or years?
So I studied pretty much with all of them 3 to 5 years. So my first teacher, I think I studied with them for 3 to 4 years. And with Ustad Zarif, it was 5 years. With Ustad Tamasibi, also 5 years. So 4 to 5 years with each teacher, for sure.
What do you mean when you say I started by playing the elementary books or...
we have an art school in Iran, and they have books that you take when you start playing, and those books are designed for each instrument. So there are these books that are kind of an introduction to playing tar, kind of a beginner's books that I teach of them. If I start teaching someone a beginner. And everyone uses those books. It's like the standard books of the
basics
of the conservatory. Yeah,
so like the names of the strings, the maybe location, fingers, how to hold. What's the right hand, left hand, posture?
Those are all in the book too. Although those are mostly supposed to be taught through the teacher, because each teacher have their own school of how to hold this instrument and all of that. It's basically, it starts with very simple pieces, like do 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 so 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 do do so so do 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 so do so do so do so, right? So basically, like really simple etudes for students to start playing, and then moving on, it gets a little bit more advanced, but yeah.
Yeah, but here I have a question of the selection of the later teachers or instructors. How did it happen? So your uncle is your uncle.
My uncle is my uncle. So that was, yes, exactly. My second teacher, Ustad Zarif, well, I mean, he was the teacher. He was the tar teacher. Anyone, even Arshad, who I went to his to study with him afterwards, was his teacher. Hossein Ali Zadeh was his teacher. Even Lutfi was at some point was his teacher. Like every famous and non-famous tar player at some point had studied with Ustad Zarif. And he accepted me as his student. I was honored. I was really young when I attended his classes. I was the youngest. I was the youngest student that he had. I think I was 12, 11 or 12 when I started studying with Ustad Zarif. And I studied 5 years with him. So he I mean, that would have been a natural kind of option, or natural go-to as a teacher. And then Arshad Tamosavi, again, he had done extensive work on Iranian music in general. He's wrote the entire Radif of Ostad Karimi. He's transcribed that entire Radif, which was massive. And by the way, so this is a bit technical, but when I started studying with Arshad, we call him Arshad Ostad Tamosavi. The other book of Davami, which was published by Paivar, that was not actually published yet. So the only tar player that was teaching a vocal Radif was Arshad. The only tar player who actually learned and was and transcribed the entire Radif of Karimi, right? Which was really important. I mean, after playing three different Radifs I played before I started the vocal Radif. I really wanted to play the vocal Radif, and he was the only one. Even actually, I remember when I talked to Ustad Zarif about going to study with Arshad, he said make sure to start learning from him the vocal Radif on Tar, right? Oh. So it was a significant thing. Even Ustad Zarif, he was not teaching the vocal Radif. Even Ustad Zarif, I do remember that day. He said, "Oh yes, that's a great idea. Go study with them the vocal Radif." He was the only one who actually transcribed all that, and that's only one of his significant works. He transcribed he collected all the compositions of Rukniyatin Khan, which these days I'm quite obsessed. When I say these days, I mean these years. I'm obsessed with his compositions. And then Darvish Khan, he gathered, well, I want to say all, but it probably can't be all, but a lot of the rangs. He gathered 100 rangs, which, basically like all the rangs that we play in our music repertoire. He also lately published another book called the Book of Pish Daramads, like basically all the Pish Daramads. And he's recently done this massive work, which is basically an encyclopedia to Iranian music. He has created an encyclopedia. Well, here I have the book. It's a massive book here, and I think it's about 1,000 pages.
This is like a shahnama of music now.
Exactly. This is like this is 700 some pages. This is like the encyclopedia of every name that we have in the entire Radif, or any name of instrument, any name that is somehow relevant to Iranian music has been mentioned here, and he's done some research on the background of the name, where it comes from. If it was a maqam, or if it was a gouche, or if it was a daskah, or name of a composition, or a name of a rhythmic cycle, and all that. So he's kind of he's dug really deep, and he's done an amazing job in putting all this together and creating a vast encyclopedia, which I'm sure we all will benefit from. It's just recently, it's been a year that's been published. I'm sure we will benefit from this. I mean, I personally used I did a course at Labyrinth online, and I used, a lot of the vocabulary and the definitions and terms. I used that book. Yeah. So I mean, I still think that's probably like one of the best choices that I made. He's the one that kind of helped me dig a little bit deeper into the music, and get that artistic joy that you get from playing. It was more than just a teacher. He was more like Indians have guru, but this he was more of a guide. Yeah.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you have studied Mirza Abdullah Khan Radif, then you studied it again with Arshad. So
Yes,
two
that's right.
ostads have taught you the same thing. Is there any difference or anything to share as an observation from that experience?
So my first teacher, my first ustad didn't actually finish Radif Mirza Abdullah with me. So I played Radif Mirza Abdullah with my uncle, but I didn't finish that with him. I played half of it, and then I moved and then I started studying with Ustad Zarif, which I played Radif Musa Khan, which was a different Radif kind of. And then I went to study with Arshad. I just wanted to have another, well, the truth is, Radif system, it really is actually important. No, the Radif was the same. So what you play is the same. But what is different is how your teacher teaches you how to interpret or how to listen or how to play the Radif. All the phrases, that is important. That is something that can, on the same Radif, can differ from one teacher to another. How you understand and how you interpret it and how you play it. And, and some of them, even more technically, like they have different mezrabs, like different plucking system, models or
different techniques of plucking.
Exactly, yes. So it was different actually. It was quite different, and the way they each described each maqam and each gouche, it was different. So yeah, definitely.
Maybe it's good to mention the vast variety of books or methods. While we are discussing this, I mean, it seems that you guys have a lot of method books and radifs and whatever elementary books, all in Persian language. Maybe no English version
Yes,
of it.
that is. I mean, radifs and books, they're all written in. All the scores are in Western notation, so it's for anyone. It's usable. Usually there are not much scripts written in Farsi in these books. They're mostly just scores, maybe the name of the piece, and maybe an introduction in the beginning. But you're right. I mean, we do have all different variety of radifs. So in the past, it was, you would become an ustad when you kind of have established your own radif. So take that into account. We have radif. Kasai has a radif. Sabah has a radif. Hormozi has a radif. I mean, all the big ustads, they had the Nedavut has a radif. Like they all had their own radif, which was slightly different from one teacher, or maybe more than slightly from one teacher to another. So it was important to, yes. And again, it depends. Like the one was a ney player, the other one was a kamancha player, the other one was a tar player, the other one was a santur player. So they each kind of developed their own radif that suited the instrument that they were playing.
And some of them are like multifaceted masters, like Saba. So he's a violinist, and he plays nai. And he plays...
I mean, I'm sure he played nai too, but I don't have any recordings of him playing nai. But Sabah plays violin beautifully. Sabah plays sitar.
Yes.
Sabah played santur. So he did play many. So in fact, Pariva was a student of Sabah in santur. So yes, Sabah played many different instruments, and he was a fantastic musician. I also think, and one of the things that I'm actually really studying these days is Radif Sabah, just because it's written mostly for violin or the santur. It's not, they don't teach the tar players, which I'm a tar player, but I'm actually, I started studying the Radif Sabah, which is written for santur. And the beauty of that Radif is kind of a combination of vocal and instrumental Radif. So it's really beautifully articulated Radif that has both poetry in it, so you sing along, and you also has some really technically interesting pieces, compositions in it, which are instrumental.
So when you say vocal Radif, like the one you mentioned for Sabah or Arshad, does it mean that you would always sing the vocal part, or you can do both?
So that depends on the teacher and how they. I ask my students to sing along, but what is more important is to basically understand with how to play all those vocal techniques and vocal details, which we call them tahrirs. How you actually perform those tahrirs on your instrument. So that is more important. But my teacher Arshad, he always wanted us to sing. He would sing himself too when teaching a vocal radif. I do the same. I ask my students to sing along. But what was it's important for us to understand exactly how the vocal ornaments work, how they embellish and all that, and it's important for us to learn and to be able to play that on our instrument. It's very significant, yeah.
And that's different from the Western vocal exercises, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So, how would we look at these radifs compared to the methods or method? If we talk about violin or piano or whatever, just to bring this closer to the understanding of our audience.
So I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question right, but one thing that was important was the pitch and the tuning and the intervals that changes from one teacher to another. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier is how you interpret a specific musical phrase. I mean, that is how you that is how your playing would be different from someone else's. So that's quite significant.
I can give you an example. I mean, for example, if you take Suzuki method for violin, or any other method that we use in Russia or wherever for the Western violin, or for example, Daoud method for Muhyiddin Haydar, Sharif Muhyiddin Haydar, they do a progressive exercises, etudes, and then pieces, caprices, whatever, whether is it Arabic or Eastern or Western, but it has a progressive nature. And with every etude or with every exercise, we do have some skills that we attain as players. So we master our instrument and we master the expression. Is it built the same way when we look at Radif?
No, I don't think so. So Radif is something that is established already. So it's not something that you develop. So I mean, it was quite usual in the past that they would start teaching by Radif. So they would, on the first lesson, they would show you how to hold your instrument, and they would immediately start teaching the Radif. But that's not how they do mostly in Iran. I mean, there are still some teachers that choose to use that method. It's just that you start playing the Radif from the beginning, like the beginning.
Yes.
But that's not how it starts. So most of the time, the teachers, they try to prepare you so technically you're capable of playing all the details and ornamentations and embellishments in the Radif, and then they start introducing you to Radif, and they ask you to play Radif. And the Radif is not a progressive method for. So the pedagogy for Radif is not like you start with this maqam, which is more simple, and then you move to the more complicated maqam. That's not how it is. It's the Radif is the Radif, and the maqams are, they're just played as they are. It's not a progressive. It's not a progressive method for training, for teaching. It's at least I was not trained that way.
Yeah, so you are a teacher now, and for sure you have students, and you have already experienced some of the masters in the past. What is the approach to go for Radif? We don't go from beginning to end. Do we jump to whatever favorite piece by the master? He will pick this today. Maybe he picks something else from the end of the Radif. Just want to understand the approach.
Sure. Yeah. The approach is actually quite simple, but also very organized. So when you start playing Radif, you say, for instance, you start with one daska. Depending on the teacher, some choose to start with shur, some choose to start with mahur. It really doesn't matter, I guess. You start at a daska, and depending on the Radif that you're playing, I mean, whose Radif are you playing? Playing Sabah or Kasai or Dawami, or whoever's Radif you're playing. The sequences are pretty standard. Like that dictates what is the first. Well, I mean, obviously the first maqam would be Daramat. What is the second one? What is the one after that? What is the one after that? And you keep playing. So depending on how well you can digest and learn, and how. So the teacher will teach you one or two or three maqams, which were again like basically the well organized. They are all in order, and you kind of follow that order that is set by the person who's narrated the Radif.
Interesting. And the Radifs, I don't want to go into history, but they do go back to a very early stage, maybe 2 centuries ago, like the first Radif, or?
So not in the form that we know now. I'm not a scholar in that, but I believe the Radif in the form that we are playing it now, it's more developed around Qajar era. So 100 to 200 years ago, something like that. But again, I don't consider myself a scholar on that topic. So
But it is really a very impressive and effective method of producing a massive number of musicians, vocals wise or instrument wise. It's very effective. And I don't know if this is still being built by the new masters, or maybe whatever we have is enough. I don't know.
Well, I don't know of anyone else who's working on introducing a new Radif, which is unfortunate, but I don't think anyone is doing that. I guess the reality is a lot of these Radifs were not discovered, and they're being discovered just recently, lately, and people are starting to work more on those. Like I said, I mean, Radif Sabah was something that was not taught a lot, and I myself think, well, I've been lacking if I've not studied that Radif, and I definitely feel the urge to study that Radif. So there are many Radifs, and Kasai has this extensive Radif, and so does Bahari, and just there's just so many Radifs that I think people are kind of dedicated more their time into learning them than creating one.
Yeah, I mean, enough repertoire is already there. Maybe we cover every instrument, every, let's say, authentic instrument so far.
In terms of Radif?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that in every instrument there is a Radif that is kind of narrated by virtuoso or by Yes, I think that's the case. Yes.
So how will a student feel, or maybe start progressing or improving while studying a Radif or studying with a master?
So Radif is really just there for us to understand how the modal system of our music works. It's a pretty complex system, and it's a pretty massive one. But regardless, I mean, if you keep playing the Radif, then you're not really creating anything interesting, probably. I mean, it could be interesting, but you're definitely not creating anything new, that's for sure. So what we have to do is to learn all these radifs and to kind of understand and digest it, internalize it, and try to make music based on that, and you know, take it forward and kind of create our own music based on how we understand now that we understand how the system works, how that entire modal music system and our music works, and then we move forward with that. We already digested, we already learned, we internalized all that, and it's time to move on. And when I mean, my teacher was like that. Arshad was in particular. When he was teaching me, say, Radif, you know, in Radif Dawami, when he was teaching me a daskah, he would always kind of combine different compositions from different composers. You know, if we were playing, you know, a maqam, say Hosseini, he would definitely teach me something, you know, a tasnif or a rank or pish darmad in that maqam. So kind of combine, kind of have this, you know, this more just not just Radif, you know, because you do need other compositions to be able to play other compositions, to be able to create music and to make music. So yeah, I think it's important. Radif is an extremely important element in our music, but it's also important not to get stuck in it, which you can easily do so. I mean, you can easily get stuck in Radif. It's massive. It's and everyone know of the importance of it, but for that you have to be. It's a dangerous one. You have to be careful. Not to get stuck in Radif. Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the responsibility of the master, to teach the students to not to be stuck in a Radif, right?
Well, that depends on, you know, from teacher to teacher. Some teachers actually, they do insist that, you know, that this is the pure form of music, and this is what you have to be playing, and which I think is not healthy. I definitely disagree. I mean, I like the fact that they're trying to preserve something, but preserving something doesn't necessarily mean creating something new from that. So it's just, it could be a bit of a dilemma there, right?
Yes, in fact. So how do you receive a feedback in such setup of one-to-one, or I don't know if there is any kind of group work in the teaching process?
I didn't. I mean, growing up, I never attended any group lessons. I only had one-to-one lessons from my teachers, with my teachers, and that's the only. I mean, they would do workshops, and that's different. You know, on a specific topic, you do a workshop. But all the music lessons that I took, and I saw that, you know, my teachers were teaching, there was all one-on-one.
And how do you get a feedback? For example, oh, you have done well, or fix this, or you need to work on that. I mean,
yeah, that's exactly, you said it exactly like that. They would be like, okay, well, good job. I mean, but you have to practice on this part a little bit more, or not good, go play the same thing again for next week. It's entirely at the discretion of the teacher, right?
And the practice when you go home is doing exactly what you have done in the lesson, or there are basic warm-ups, scales, whatever. I mean, just give us an insight about how do you practice at home as a traditional student.
Right. Yeah, so that's interesting you asked that. I mean, technically you should warm up. We don't do scales. We don't do that. It's just not we don't do that. It's not in our music. We don't do scales. But there are etudes that you play. There are compositions that are meant for warming up. I mean, if you're a good student, I would start with those, playing those slowly, and then kind of after you warm up, you play them a little bit faster, and then you start practicing what your teacher taught you.
Yeah.
But that again, not every student follows the exact same.
Sure. And that will apply to the time or the duration a student will dedicate himself for in a practice session, right?
Exactly. So I myself, there were years that I would play 8 to 10 hours a day, and there were months and years that I would play maybe an hour to two a day. So it really depends on your what stage of your life and
what's your objective as a person and so on. And would it be healthy to have two masters teach you at the same time or more?
I'm not sure. I never tried that. I doubt that it would be helpful. I don't think so. But I don't know. I never tried that.
And
I myself wouldn't be happy if my student is studying with someone. I mean, I would be more than happy for them to go study with someone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I doubt if that would be fruitful.
I see. And when would you say that this student is now called a musician? It has reached to, I mean, the level is now a maturity level. It's not a student anymore.
I'm not myself in that level. I don't consider myself in that level to be able to call anyone a musician, and I still don't think that completely applies to myself. It's a really high standard to me to become a true master of the music that we play. I mean, and I'm sure that's probably anywhere else around the world. It really takes a long time. I mean, like I said, I played 3, and now I'm playing the 4th. I played 4 Radifs, and it's just that it's not easy to have an overall understanding of how it works. I mean, you do get it, and then even after you do get it how it works, performing it in a way that you're creating music, you're creating something for yourself, or you've internalized all this, and you're creating art, beautiful art and beautiful music. I think it takes time. It takes a lot of time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even consider myself in that level.
Is it a trait of a musician to be humble? Should be part of it. Yes.
No, but I mean, you get the sense, from all the. I mean, when an ostad in the past would release a Radif under their own name, they probably were at their 50s or 60s, right? It takes so much time to establish something, and then. Anyways,
I see.
I didn't mean just to be humble. I genuinely think that's.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Actually, I would like to hear your reflections on what really worked and continues to work for students following this tradition of Radif and one-to-one teaching. What are those things that really work and continue to work?
So I guess I guess what is really important is that personal connection that you make with your teacher. It's a huge part of that. I mean, like I said, I never attended any group lessons, so I don't really have much experience with that, but I only had one-on-one lessons, and the connection that you make over the years, and it doesn't just appear. You keep going. You kind of try to be organized. You keep going regularly every week on a certain time, certain day, and you have to respect that time, and and that you have to be prepared and all that. Again, I'm not a scholar in pedagogy of this method of teaching, but I feel like there's so much to be imparted by the teacher to the students in those one-on-one sessions. Even though when I was studying with Radif, there were probably 20 more students sitting in the same room. He still would teach me. I would be like two chairs, him and me, but they're like people sitting around us. Even that, you still have eye contact. He's just looking at you, only at you, and he's talking only to you, and it creates a relationship, which I'm not sure if in a group setting would be the same. And I'm not comparing these two. I've never been to a group lessons. I can't tell. But I feel like that, that. I mean, okay, so in case of Arshad, he was such a significant teacher for me. He would start. He would schedule his students every 40 minutes or 45 minutes, something like that. And he would sometimes he would teach you for an hour and a half. Sometimes he would teach you for 30 minutes. Sometimes he would teach for 45 minutes. It wasn't really 45 minutes, and if someone is waiting, let them wait. Or he would cater that session for you so that he can impart what he wanted to, what he chose to in that session. So it wasn't really time based as it is here in North America. It wasn't anything like that. It was, sometimes you would go sit there and he was playing something, right? He would still ask you to come sit there, but he would continue playing, right? Playing whatever he was playing. And in those moments that he's, I remember once I walked in and he asked me to go sit there. And he made an eye contact, and with the eye contact, he asked me to go sit in the chair. I sat there and he continued playing. He was playing this Abu Ata, which to me is probably by far the best music that I've heard from my teacher, from Arshad. And he has many CDs and recordings and albums and all that. But that moment there, it was something, and I got a lot from that. I mean, that inspired me a lot. So yeah, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's the way it worked then, and you believe it would continue to work. And the relevant question is for the new youth. Did they start changing this method today in Iran?
I don't think so. I think youth are still studying with mostly on one-on-one basis. I'm pretty sure that is what is being mostly practiced. I know, from my friends. My uncle, the one who was my first teacher, he runs a music school and he has many students and he teaches one-on-one. My close friends in Iran, all my friends are musicians and they all run, one of them actually, two of them, they run music school and it's all one-on-one. I'm sure there are, to make it more affordable, there are probably other group lesson options, but I believe it works best if it's in a one-to-one format, yeah.
Are there cases? I know for sure that there are some people who love the Western music or classical European music, and maybe they would study there outside or maybe inside with the complete from the beginning Western style, right? But is there a group who would combine both, who would say, okay, I will pick the violin and maybe adopt some of the method into the Persian music? Is there a combination of both today? Or
Well, I guess that's what it is supposed to be. I mean, violin is a fantastic instrument, but if we take violin and play it the way that they play in Western world, it wouldn't work in our music. It just simply won't work. And so the sample that you brought is actually a really interesting one, because if you listen to Persian violin, which was played really widely just before the revolution, after the revolution, it was kind of going back to the values, our own traditions and values. They played less and less of the violin, then they played more kamanche. But even before that, Bahari, the greatest kamanche virtuoso, which I actually, one of the recordings that I've had here is Bahari with Adi. He plays violin in many of the recordings. He plays violin rather than kamanche. So that's quite interesting. And there's another recording that I'm hoping if you can play that one too is what in the Western world they call a jam session. It's not really a jam session, but you can see it's more improvised recording. And in that recording, one of the most fantastic musicians we had, Mortaza Khan Mahjoubi, he was a piano player. Mortaza Khan, he actually tunes his piano to Iranian music intervals and to the pitches that we play. So he tunes the piano to all the corons and quarter tones and all that, which is really significant. And then you listen to it. So, I mean, to what extent he studied Western music, I'm not sure, but I know that what he did on piano and what he played on piano, tuned piano, is just fabulous, beautiful. It's really beautiful, and you don't really think it's a Western element. You think like, okay, well, it's this really amazing sounding instrument that works really well with our music as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't want to go deep into things like the many tunings for a violin, for example. They use to make the music more into a local one, right? There are a lot of things that people do to make their music reflect the best on these instruments. And like Persian music, they have really made great efforts in the tuning for the violin, right? For the double sounds or double stops that are really relevant to the Persian music and so on, like what we hear in Saba and his students. But that's really interesting what you have said.
Yeah.
Now, is this culture have been carried with the immigrants when, like, we talk about yourself or any other who were outside in Canada or whatever country, and they continue to teach this culture and this music?
Well, there are many great musicians, fortunately or unfortunately, who've immigrated, and a lot of master musicians like Pedram Khawarazmini, for instance. He lives here in Toronto. There are a lot of musicians who've immigrated, and they teach, all of them. They all teach, and I guess, well, they teach what they know, right? Which is Iranian music, that's for sure. But yeah,
So they carry the same culture, right? They carry the same culture.
They do, but there's always this, you know, what is a trend that I see, and I think it's a significant trend, and it's a bit of an unfortunate one, is you know, when you immigrate, or even if you don't immigrate, now it doesn't really matter because of the social media and the fact that all of us, we feel hugely that we need to have a presence in social media. We all think it's something that is expected of us. You know, the more followers, the better musician. You know, that, and we all know it's not true. But unfortunately, the notion exists, and it has been kind of accepted to some degree among audience for sure, and even among musicians. I mean, we all are trying to get more followers, or I don't even know how it works, but you know,
you're right.
But it's just so that I feel like that is played a bit of a destructive role in how you conduct your pedagogical methods. How do you teach? How do you train your students? The truth is, you know, playing more exciting music or more ecstatic or more, you know, or playing less of those notes that are less heard, right? All those microtones and chorons and you know, the pitch system and the tuning system, to make that a little bit more simple, a little bit more palatable. That is unfortunately something that we see a really significant trend that is happening. It's just that, you know, the fact is, living in a Western, and you know, all these immigrations are mostly to the Western world. You know, it's costly to live here, and you need to survive. You need more students and more students and more students and more concerts, and you know, for that you have to accommodate, and accommodating here can mean anything from, you know, playing lighter songs, playing lighter music, and playing more palatable, more nostalgic, you know, something that people connect right away, something that people have heard.
Yeah.
And even on the more technically speaking levels, you know, the pitch system, the tuning, and all those, you try to compromise, you try to make it easier for people, more exciting. And I've seen advertisement that, you know, this teacher was saying, well, yes, Iranian music doesn't have to be serious. It can be fun. Come here, come to my classes. Let's have fun. And it's, if not everyone is kind of saying it loud, but it's, unfortunately, it is the attitude that is mostly being advertised. It's, you know, it's just try to make it more fun for people to join, and, you know,
sell.
Yeah, so, and I understand the necessity of it, but I'm not sure if it's all constructive.
I see your point. And in terms of teaching, are there any adaptations, for example, in terms of timely slots, for example, that we have 1 hour for one-to-one lessons, maybe the introduction of group lessons, maybe we have all sorts of people coming to your lessons, not those that are born Persian. So maybe a Canadian, an Arab, an Indian guy is interested in Persian music and he would like to join you. So in this case, there are radifs, there are all sorts of things that you would choose, right? Is there an impact of that in your choices, or other instructors outside?
Well, I myself try to I mean, here's the thing. Even if you're Persian born, you're not necessarily develop the ear for a Radif. So to be able to play the Radif and to be able to play all those tahrirs and those intervals and all that, you need to develop an ear for that.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to spend some time, just listening and playing maybe some more simple compositions, but compositions that do manifest those tahrirs and those intervals. So you kind of want to guide them, keep them in the loop, but help them to listen more, rather than overwhelm them with all this huge repertoire and just dump it on them, right?
Mm-hmm. But so maybe there are some adaptations or maybe introduction of new systems or new thought method, new pedagogy, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's not an established method that we can discuss here, but I think that really depends on the teachers and teacher mostly. Yeah.
This is a very lovely discussion, Araz. Think
Sure.
let's have some deep dive into the experience of Radif, which you covered mostly. But I would like to tell me about those that you have studied and maybe give some introduction and comparison between them.
Sure. I mean, I studied Radif Mirza Abdullah, Radif Dawami, Radif Ali Shahnazi, and Radif Musa Khan. So Radif Mirza Abdullah is the one that is most common. Most of the Iranian musicians, students, and teachers, that's what they teach. They teach the Radif Mirza Abdullah. It's an instrumental Radif. It's a nice one. To me, it's a bit too instrumental in the sense that it has a lot of elements that don't necessarily reflect what that maqam or that gouche does to the dastgah. You see, the thing is, we have one dastgah which is basically the main maqam, and then we have gouches, different gouche, which each of these gouches, some of them, they actually change they modulate. They change the mode of the maram, of the main maram or main dastgah. Some of them don't. Some of them are just compositions. It's just another way of articulating that maram, or composition on the same maram. It doesn't really change the maram. Where some of them are just rhythmic patterns. And I feel like Radif Mirza Abdullah, and comparing to Radif Dawami is the vocal one, is very to the point. The maqams and the gouches are pretty short, very short, brief, to the point. You know exactly what each maqam is doing to the main mode. If it modulates it, you see exactly how it works. Whereas in Radif Mirza Abdullah, it's more elaborated, it's more embellishments. It's a lot of, because it's instrumental, right? It's a lot of embellishments on the instrument, which makes it a little bit more confusing. You have to dig a little bit deeper to figure out, okay, well, what does this maqam is trying to do to the main maqam? Like, how does this modulate from the main maqam? Or what is exactly happening there? So for that, And Radif Ali Shahnazi, kind of similar to Radif Mirza Abdullah in the sense that it's an instrumental Radif. It has lots of compositions in it, rhythmic compositions, metered composition, and it's extensive in the sense that some of the maqams are like really has been heavily explored. Like I said, it's a lot more of a composition in each maqam, and it's technically challenging. So that's why they call it Radif Ali, meaning the superior Radif. It's like technically really challenging. You have to play the Radif Hossein Ali or Mirza Abdullah first, and then move to Radif Ali Shahnazi, Ali Akbar Khan. Um, yeah, so this is my take comparing. Oh, Radif Musa Khan and the other Radif that I also forgot to mention. That's an instrumental Radif. So it's kind of a collection of all the Radifs. It's not really. It's not the Radif. It's more like an encyclopedia for Radif. So what Musa Khan did, Musa Khan was a fantastic tar player. He was the direct teacher of Ustad Zarif. What he did, he put together every gushe from all the Radifs. You know, if we have Daramat, he has like 5 Daramats. If you have Kereshmi, he has like 3 Kereshmas. If you have Hosseini, he has like 3-4 different versions of Kereshmi. And he kind of collected all of them in his Radif. So it's more like a collection of the different gushes in each dastgah, yeah.
And how would you compare this encyclopedia with the one you mentioned?
Oh, this is not an encyclopedia. Okay, that was a wrong use of the word. It's not it's like a collection of the different.
A huge repertoire.
It's a huge repertoire. Yeah, it's a score. It's not written. It's not no text. The other one is all text. Right there. The other is like an actual encyclopedia.
Very clear. And do you think the notation is very depictive of these pieces? Or it always needs a master to explain?
No, you always need a teacher. You always need a teacher. You always do. It's because it's not easy to write these down. These are free rhythm for the most part. How much pause you do and where you pause and all that. It's just Ustad Talai did a really great job rewriting Radif Mirza Abdullah. He kind of developed a system of notation which helps a little bit. I mean, it helps a lot actually, more than a little. But you still need a teacher. You still need a teacher, and the truth is, for the most part, you should learn it by the ear. You should not be learning these from a piece of paper. You should learn it. You should hear it from your teacher. And you should learn it. You should learn it from your teacher. I mean, if you want to record it, or if you want to just stick around, so he plays for 2-3 more students, and you learn it. But that's a better way of learning.
So you hear it and learn it, and you live it and learn it, and you see the master and learn it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So if we say, what are these radifs composed of? I have seen you and heard you saying a lot of jargon here. Can we introduce these jargon words? Like, what are the radifs composed of? You said, for example, daramad, karishma, avaz, rang. Let's have some flavor of these definitions. And are these pieces everywhere in all these radifs?
No, so some of these names of the gushes or maqams, they're specific to one dastgah. Some of them travel from one dastgah to another. It's just like how it is in Ottoman music. You have all these name of different maqams, and what happens is in Iranian music, they've kind of categorized them. They've kind of put them in a class. They've classified them. It's like, okay, this is, we put all these under the envelope or under the umbrella of, say, Ras Panjgah, or we call all the Segah or Chargah. So it's kind of been, been categorized, organized under the same umbrella. But the truth is, if you're playing Segah, we have a maqam in Segah called Mukhalif, which has nothing to do with Segah, really. I mean, from the mode perspective, the modal characteristics of Mukhalif and Segah has nothing to do with Segah. But still, it's categorized as if it would be nice if you're playing Segah, you modulate to Mukhalif, which would be beautiful, and you can always modulate back. But it's not necessarily it's not that every maqam in the dastgah follows the same modal characteristics of the main maqam or the name of the dastgah, right?
Yeah, and what do we mean by rang, Jihar Mudrab,
Right, Rem,
Awaz.
Charmazov, Pish, Daramat, those are forms of composition.
Forms.
So right, there are forms of composition. So they're not they're based on one or some of the maqams that are played in the Radif, but they're forms of composition. So Pish Daramad means Pish means before, kind of similar idea to what they have in Ottoman music as Peshref. Not same form, but similar idea that you start the performance with that. So typically Pish Daramad is a slower piece, mostly in 6, sometimes in 4, but mostly in 6. It kind of introduces some of the main maqams of that dastgah, and then we have Char Mizrab. Char Mizrab is an instrumental form. It's a form. Char means 4, basically. 4 Mizrab. But it basically means it's mostly in 6 or 4 again, but fast 6 or fast 4, and it's mostly played to show the virtuosity of the musician, of the master who is playing.
It's like a longer.
Kind of, true, yes, and also it changed the mode from the more slow, heavy Pish Daramad, kind of changed the mood there. And then we have Tasnif. Tasnif is a composition that is a song, basically. Is a composition that accompanies the singer, and the singer sings in meters, and in between we have Araz, which is rhythm-free, kind of what we refer as improvised music, and that is also something that we can discuss in length. Yeah,
I think Araz, we will have a session, another one, to have an appreciation of good pieces of music with you. So we go in detail and see the beauty of these.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, each one of these you got to listen. You got to have a sample, an example you listen to, and you understand more what it means. And Rang is typically the piece that a performance is ended with. It's a shorter piece. It's pretty much always, except for some really rare exceptions, always in a 6/8. Not so fast, relatively fast, but it's also meant to kind of create a more dance vibe at the end of the performance, and it comes after the tasnif. Yes.
Now these radifs will have a dedicated explanation of the concepts, or it's automatic, like rhythms, embellishments? It's automatic. It's inherent in them. The master will maybe bring up these in detail, right?
So the radif has nothing to do with the compositions, right? So the radif is what you learn and what you teach to understand the music. But when you're performing, you're kind of stuck with Pish Daraman, which are compositions, are not necessary. You don't start playing the radif. The embellishments and all the ornaments and everything, it really depends on the radif that you're playing. And the teacher that teaches you, like to what extent they emphasize on the tahriz. And again, it depends if you're playing vocal radif or instrumental radif. In instrumental radif, it's more, you try to technically challenge the student. And in vocal radif, you're trying to, it's more ornated. It's more, you're trying to copy vocal performance, so it's more ornated, more detailed, like smaller movements. You're trying to copy, it's just yeah, it's like more details in it.
Interesting. How rigid or flexible is it for the music and these radifs? Are we really? I mean, you have mentioned this somehow previously, but there is an impression that radifs always encourage to be very strict with the music.
So that's a good question. See, if I'm playing Biography, for instance, name of a maqam, it appears in Isfahan, in Nava, in Dashti. It appears in Humayun. It appears in different dasgahs. But Biography does the same thing. Biography always lands on the second degree of the maqam that we're playing, right? So that is Biography all the time, and if and you know, regardless of who is narrating, if you're playing a narration of Ustad Bahari or a narration of Ustad Kasai or a narration of Mirza Abdullah or Dawami, they all do the same thing. So the modal characteristics of Biography will be Biography, right? It's the articulation that is different. Or the composition or the phrase, the musical phrase. You know? So we have. I mean, we don't, but I wish we had. You know, in Turkish music, they have this concept of sayir that, you know, is a really short melodic pattern that or musical phrase that indicates what a maqam does. And I was talking to Ross lately and recently, and he said that he's composed a lot of sayyirs, you know, during the pandemics. So, you know, I mean, anyone can compose a sayyir, and so that's basically the idea. The idea is you can compose a sayyir for Biography, and that will be your Biography, or you can just play the one from, you know, Bahari or Muzir, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Now, if you look at these radifs going from an old to a modern one, do you think music is showing a change of character? You know, the language, as you always have described the relationship between music and natural language.
Yeah.
It evolves, you know, it changes. Do you see this happening to the Persian music?
Well, the truth is, the most recent Radif that has been developed is by, I think, if I'm not wrong, by Ustad Kasai, which still is a really old master. I mean, he died not so long ago, but he has, you know, he's not considered a new musician. He's like one of the older masters. And the one before that would be Bahari, probably. They just, I feel like they all resemble pretty much the same characteristics of what you expect of Radif to be. I don't think they've changed drastically in that sense, just because they're more recent to Dawami or Mirza Abdullah. I feel like the Radifs are pretty consistent, you know, and I don't see a significant change. And I'm trying to think, but I don't think there's any other Radif that is developed after these masters, but I might be wrong.
How about the music outside the Radifs? Is it changing and evolving?
Oh, the music outside the Radif is changing drastically, you know, and again, we go back to these recent years in particular, you know, the social media thing. I feel I keep talking about that, and I will keep talking about that because I think it's really significant, the role that the social media is playing in changing these. I mean, you compare the industry of our music to Western pop music industry or Western classical music industry. We are considered a micro industry or a micro culture because you know, it's just it's a much smaller. I hate to call it, but it's a much smaller market, right? That's what it is, and and they're all significantly changing and drastically changing. The truth is, you only get a minute to post on Instagram, and in 1 minute you have to impress. Our music doesn't work that way. It takes us a few minutes to just establish what we want to say. I mean, it takes time just to say, okay, well, I want to play a little bit of, Hesar. I want to play Hesar. It takes time for me to establish that, and so in one of the recordings that I actually chose today, it's from my most favorite singer, Adib Khansari and Bahari. It's a duet. It's a private recording, and Adib recorded that in his home. He actually talks about it. He says, I recorded this after I was sick for 20 days. And Adib plays for 16 minutes. He sings and with Bahari, along with Bahari, and they only play two maqams, only two really similar maqams, only Bidar and only Bakhtiyari. And he sings 5 verses of Hafiz poetry in Bidar, which is really significant. Every verse, although it's recited in Bidar, but every verse is different, recited differently, sang differently. It's quite extraordinary. And I feel like that is something that is being missed these days, just because there is no time. You don't get that luxury of having someone listening to you for 30 minutes or you only have a minute. And then what you can do in a minute, I guess it's firefighter or no fireworks. That's what you can do, right?
Yes, but how do you compare, let's say, the music of the 50s, let's say 20s, 30s, 70s, 90s, let's say before the internet? Did it evolve or change? And like, just give a flavor of the evolution, if there is any.
Well, I mean, again, it's a topic that I don't consider myself a scholar on that. But I guess the recording and radio, they had a huge impact. If you listen to pre-radio era, all the recordings on the gram, and they're all tend to be really fast, played really fast, just because you only had 3-4 minutes, or 7 minutes. You gotta say what you want to say really quick and really fast. So it's that style of playing that is played really.
Sure, that's one impact.
And then right, so and then we have the radio era and the and recording era of that you don't have the limits of time, and things all get stretched and stretched and stretched in a way that some of the radio recordings in Iranian music, they're stretched in a way that it's a little bit exhausting to listen to. Just that they had all the time in the world and they were getting paid and all that. So they just took their time and they just kept playing and playing.
So Araz, regarding the term mugam or maqam, is it used in the concept of dasgah, or you just use it for us to understand the concepts?
So no, unfortunately, it has not used. It's we call them gushem. Although I personally tend to use the gushes in dasgah, just because not all the gushes in our dasgah do the same thing. I tend to use the gushes in our dasgah that change the mode, like have a modal significance, and I call them maqams. And I do that because I feel like not we should distinguish the significance of a gushe that has a modal significance to one that really does not. It's just a composition. It's just composition in another gushe.
Interesting. Now that we covered a good portion of discussion about Radif, maybe we take another interview in detail about this with you. let's go and hit some quick discussions. For
Sure.
example, I would like to hear from you about our adjacent musics around us. I mean, I'm sure you are studying them, and it's maybe in a good position to compare and see the way we study them, practice them, the Ottoman, Arabic, Azeri, etc.
For sure. I mean, it is very unfortunate that growing up in Iran and studying all these music, none of my teachers and nobody in the music scene that I was friend with was interested in listening or learning music, anything other than Iranian music, which is really unfortunate. So I think the great significance of what Labyrinth does, is to kind of bring that transnational element of music. I mean, all these musics are heavily connected. They're deeply connected. They all have roots in the same concept for music. Yet, the musicians from each one of these traditions, for the most part, they're not aware of what's happening in the other side of the border, which really didn't exist that many years ago. I mean, all those borders are quite recent developments. I, for myself, I've told this before too. I for myself really understood the Radif, I think, the best when I actually encountered the makam system in Turkish music, and how that works and how they compose based on that system. It gave me a lot, a deeper, a more thorough understanding of our own Radif. It all made more sense, after I got to know more about and learn more about. And it's very unfortunate, I mean, we all can benefit from learning each other's music heavily, and that's unfortunate that we are not connected, and we don't listen and we don't learn. Things are changing. So I know a lot of Iranian musicians who are actually learning and studying and exploring Ottoman music and Arab music. Insane. But that wasn't the case 10 years ago. But that is changing. That is drastically changing, and I'm really glad. I mean, I hear some really interesting projects happening in Iran. People are exploring that world. Let it be Afghan Rabab or a Turkish tambour or Turkish kamancha.
Yeah, interesting. And wouldn't it be better that a musician start in one language in the beginning? If we talk about language and music as a knowledge.
I think so, for sure. No, I totally agree with you, but I feel like these are all kind of dialects of the same language, if I may say. I don't think we're speaking different language. I mean, we're not that different, at least. I mean, we definitely have different dialects, that's for sure. But it doesn't mean that we don't understand each other.
We do, yes, we do. But I mean, in the beginning, like as a child, maybe it's good to learn and master a language as a mother tongue and then expand,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, but I mean, I wouldn't think that it's acceptable if someone from Tehran wouldn't understand someone with an Isfahani accent or with an Azeri accent. Like they need to understand each other. It's totally unacceptable. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you speak a different. You have an accent and I don't understand," or you speak with a different accent, I don't understand. It's totally unacceptable. But what has happened is they're regarded as completely different languages, and that is, I think, is not constructive at all.
Yeah, I do agree. How about the main difference between Persian music and Azeri music, as they see themselves totally different?
I don't think we are totally different. I mean, we might have some different names. See, the one thing development that happened in Azeri music is that, after the revolution, they tempered the intervals. There are recordings, older recordings, that you can hear the intervals are what they're playing is basically exactly what we play now. I mean, it's the same region. It's the same, really. I mean, I know they're called different countries now, but it's, same people.
Yeah.
It's the same people, same culture, same music, really. So after the revolution, I mean Bolshevik revolution, the borders are all closed and everything, and they tempered the intervals and other music, and so their tuning and their pitch system that changed for them. But I think we're really, really close. I don't. Yeah.
Only the expressions and the naming, maybe, of the theory.
Sure. And again, but that again, it's just the borders were closed for so long, right? So names could have been changed or anything, but.
Okay, another question is how do you describe the Persian music improvisation? If we can call it improvisation.
Sure. Yeah. So that is a tough question. It's a bit of a complicated one. See, what we call as improvised music, as if it did not exist in our mind before, that is what it's called, improvised, meaning I have no idea what I'm playing. Well, that is not the case in our music. That is not what we call improvisation. Maybe it's a wrong word, or maybe we should use a different term. Because if I'm playing an improvisation in Humayun, I know what I'm playing. I mean, I don't know exactly note to note what I'm playing. I don't know what kind of tahrir I'm playing. I don't know what, but I do know like the entire structure that I'm playing. I know where I'm starting. I know which notes I'm playing. I know which notes I'm going to be touching on. I mean, it's all. So, listen, I think to elaborate more on that, I'll tell you a story. And this is a story that it's told to us, it's narrated to us as the highest embodiment or highest form of music, like how music can be, and the music, the art of music in its peak, right? The zenith of music or art of music. And that is that, a king of, is from Shahnameh. I know the story, I don't think it's from Shahnameh, but the story goes, Khosrow Parviz, one of the kings of the Shahnameh, has a horse, Shabdiz, which he loves a lot, and he loves the horse so much. He says once he says, if anyone brings the news of death of Shabdiz, I'm going to behead them. So the person who is in charge of Shabdiz, is always scared. And one day Shabdiz dies. Of course, it's a horse dies. And then the poor guy doesn't know what to do. He's helpless, and he goes to Barbad, a famous musician, legendary musician, Iranian or we just have a name, right? And explains the problem, the situation. I mean, if I go to the king and say, I'm going to be beheaded, so what do I do? And it is said that the next session that Barbet was supposed to be playing for the king, he plays the music, and at the end of his performance, the king stands up and says, "Oh, you mean Shabdiz, my horse, is dead?" And Barbet says, "Yes, it's dead, and you announced the news yourself, so you can't really kill anyone." So just think of that as an example for a highest form of music. And let's move a little bit to the West. I've been, pandemics and all that, and also personal interest. I've been reading a little bit of Western philosophy and aesthetics in particular, and I read a little bit of Immanuel Kant, and what he refers to as the highest form of art is, is when a beautiful art creates a sea of imagination.
Interesting.
For its audience. Which is what we understand, this is also true. I mean, a lot of what you seek in improvised music is, is improvised, is abstract, it's sea of imagination, right? It creates this all. But then you compare that to the story that I just told you, which the whole purpose of music was to actually give that particular message to the king.
Yes.
Rather than having a sea of imagination, rather than creating a sea of imagination for the king, the purpose was to just give a simple message to the king that your horse is dead, right? I mean, that, of course, is symbolic and all that, but I guess my point is, the aesthetics of our music is not necessarily the same as Western music, and the same. The notion of improvised music is a little bit of a complicated one. I mean, we improvise, and I say we improvise, but what we do as improvise is not expected, or it's not for our audience, is not heard in content, but they already know, but it is heard in idea. Like they already know that what we're going to be playing. They already know that I'm playing Humayun. So that idea, that structure, that whole medium, that is all well established. And I kind of explore more contents in that structure, in that, established medium.
Interesting. That's very interesting, Araz. I mean, if we would like to advise some listeners who have no encounter of Persian music, what would you advise them to start with?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question. I know maybe a good start would be some really nice pop music. I've never thought about that, but maybe a really nice pop music from the 60s or 50s. It's easier. Or maybe we should dive in. I think it depends. I don't know. That's a tough question.
I mean, let's say in Canada, we ask you to go and make an introductory lecture about Persian music. What would you do?
Well, I'll certainly talk, but like I said, I have not thought about it.
Do you recommend, for example, to put some pieces to listen to and give some appreciation?
Sure, yeah.
How about books? Are books a good way of introducing the Persian music?
Well, I don't think there are many books written. I mean, there are, but not many on Iranian music in English. Just a couple or three that I can think of. I mean, I'm sure there are many articles and all that, but books, I don't. And they're probably done by ethnomusicologists, and they're not easy to read, and you need a lot of. But if someone has never encountered Iranian music, yeah, playing music definitely. But I thought your question would be more like, what kind of music would you play for them?
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying, maybe a good pop from the 60s or 50s. Yeah.
Are there any documentaries worth mentioning that are good to start with, like interviews with masters, or maybe about their lives, or certain kind of music?
I will have to dig more into that. I don't. Nothing comes to my mind right now as we speak, but I'm sure there are some. Hopefully, yeah.
Yes. What about the phenomena of the young players that are now pumping in Iran? I see a
Yeah.
lot of young musicians, instrument players that are showing in Instagram, Facebook, everywhere.
Yeah, so I guess despite what people think of Iran, music, the music being haram, and despite that, the truth is, no, actually, the music schools are pretty active in Iran, and they teach a lot of, they've trained a lot of amazing instrumentalists and vocalists both. The number of good guitar players that I can name now is probably 4 or 5 times more than what we could name 20 years ago. It's just amazing. It's the number of solid, skilled instrumentalists and vocalists again instrumentalists for more. Are really both women and men. Yeah.
Do you see
Really
do you see any trend towards remixes, modernization, introducing harmony? Or this is not or maybe this is isolated, either or?
No, that's actually widely used. That's heavily it's in use, and it's very common, and everyone tries to have compositions that are polyphonic and with harmonies and larger orchestras. It's it's
trendy nowadays.
It's trendy. That's true. Yeah.
We have more of this in the Arab world, much more, and started long time back. Now they realize that there was something wrong happening, so some people have pulled out. But let's see the other side of it. The idea of going back to the roots.
I mean, that's a double-sided blade, right? So you have to be really careful with that. I mean, going back to the roots can also lead into extreme conservative approach, which is not healthy by no means, and it's not productive, and it just wouldn't work in terms of making art. I guess what we have to be aware of, rather than trying to be a dogmatic artist here and trying to just go back and dig into our roots and only our roots, is to perhaps be a little bit open to what is happening around us, in the countries around us, and in that region. So be open to that, because when you say roots, that's a really complicated thing. I mean, roots to when? Roots to what? Roots to what time? Which century? Roots to which area? What region? I mean, that region is so mixed, and the borders have changed constantly. So really, kind of a nationalistic approach here is definitely not helpful. but I guess what we have to be aware more of is, you know, this significant presence of social media and also Western world, like music from the West. Just like you said, I mean, it's glamorous, right? Huge orchestras, huge opera halls, you know, big sound, really, it's glamorous, and that you know, that is dazzling for someone, you know, just, whereas in our music it's just small ensemble, 2-3 musicians in the same area, you know, that's it, and you know, it's a small gathering. I guess we should just be careful on how we're presenting our music, and if the way we're presenting the music, if it fits the music, if it does the purpose, if it shows the beauties, and you know, I don't think Iranian music or any music from that world is meant to be performed at 20,000 or even 2,000 concert hall. Like, you know, 500, 400. I think that's the maximum, really. And I think the optimum would be like 200. But that's my personal preference. But I feel like, you know, all this glamorous presentation, that can be a little bit deceiving, and it can be a little bit
influencing,
disrupting, you know, in the whole process of creating art. I guess the minute that we, you know, the minute that we start thinking of how many more followers or how many more fans like that, that's where we kind of deviate from making good music and good art.
Interesting. What are you working on nowadays, Araz, in terms of projects, priorities, plans?
So I am in the process of recording a duet with Pedram Khawarzamini, which I'm very honored to do that. That is to be released in Iran. I'm also working on a different project, which is kind of an interpretation or a translation, or not really, you know, just introducing some of compositions of Ross Daly by Tar, and again with Pedram, kind of a duet to Iranians, and you know, just I'm working on preparing a collection of that. I think the huge significance of what Ross has done in his, you know, musically is that really transnational understanding of music and making of music. It's, you know, you listen to his music, you don't really necessarily have to pin to one point on the map and say, oh, this is
yeah.
It's kind of all beyond that. It's a bit above that. It's just, you know, you've digested the music of, you know, of that area. You've learned it, you've absorbed it, and now you're making something that sounds beautiful, but also from that entire region. So it's really transnational in that sense.
I like this transnational expression really of it.
Yes, and I think that is something that I feel like a lot of musicians in Iran can benefit vastly. The way he works with the modes and with maqams, and the way he modulates from one maqam to another, and the rhythmic patterns of some of his compositions, it's just phenomenal. Yeah, so I'm working on that also. I'm also, as you know, I'm the artistic director of Labyrinth here in Ontario, so we are kind of a sister branch, a satellite
Yeah.
of Labyrinth, which things are a little bit slow on that end because of the COVID situation. What we do yearly is to have workshops and bring musicians to Toronto that they present workshops, and unfortunately that's a little bit on a slow side now.
I'm really interested to talk about Labyrinth Ontario in detail compared to the headquarters in terms of activities before and after COVID, online courses, workshops, the music scene around it actually in Ontario.
Right. So what we I mean, it's only our third year this year, in which unfortunately our season got cancelled because of the COVID. But what we've done in the last 3 years is to present concerts and workshops, and we've been a little bit careful of what we're presenting as because there is this a bit of an ambiguous term here called world music. And we're trying to be a little bit careful on what we're presenting and how we're presenting, and also we've presented really good masters and teachers like Muradi, Alekba Muradi, and Momyar Hassanov from Azerbaijan, and Ross and Kelly and Pedram Khabar Zamini. And we've brought in musicians, a really good robot player from New York, and Afghani robot player Qureshi Roya, and we again we're quite young, but we are trying to create a culture and a community around these musical traditions. That people can enjoy, can listen, can go to concerts, can take workshops, and also really what we're trying to do is to keep the concerts accessible. We do these concerts, and we try to keep the ticket price really low for everyone to be able to attend. And really, the whole idea is to help people develop the taste. I mean, just like you said, how would you introduce them to Iranian music? I guess they just need to be exposed. Like, I mean, I think they just need to, in a concert setting, like in any possible setting, they just need to be exposed. They just need to be able to attend these events.
Yeah, and these events are of the main flavors of the modern music, like you have described about the different masters, different musics. Did you do any online courses recently?
I did as part of Labyrinth Online. Labyrinth Ontario has joined forces with Labyrinth and all the Labyrinths, and we're offering all our workshops on Labyrinth Online, which is led by our dear friend in San Francisco, Mina. And yeah, so what we did, we were supposed to have a series of concerts that were supposed to be happening in Toronto parks, different concerts in different parks. And we couldn't have any concerts because of the COVID situation. So what we did, we took the artists. So we did the concerts, but it was basically with no audience. It was just a video recording, and we are actually going to start releasing those videos as of tomorrow. It should be October 3rd and November 3rd.
Interesting. Looking forward to it,
Yes.
really. You guys are doing great job here in the headquarters. And, we do some greetings now to Rose, really, for all this beautiful activities.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yes, for sure.
Araz, I think we are enjoying this discussion. Let's conclude this interview with some sort of music selection and appreciation of your taste. What would you choose?
Sure. Because you asked, I actually included two tracks of my solo album. It's called Birth. The album is called Birth. It's the first track and the last track that I actually uploaded here. It's performed in Dash D. The first track is kind of a sort of a daramad, kind of getting the audience engaged in the whole mode of Dash D. And the last track, or the other track, is a ring. Actually, it's a ring. It's yeah. So that entire album is my composition. But the other two pieces that I would I want you to please play for our audiences. One of them is a duet that I actually did mention that in somewhere earlier today. It's a home recording of Adib Khansari, phenomenal early 20th century singer, and Bahari. And Ostad Bahari is a fantastic kamancha player, and I think he actually plays the violin. I might be wrong. I have to listen again. But what is really significant in this recording is how they dig really deep into just two maqam, just Bidad and Bakhtiyari for 16 minutes, and they only kind of, articulate with different phrasings, different musical phrasings, just these two maqams, and to me that is really fascinating. That is truly fascinating.
شب 19 آذر سال 1336 پس از 20 روز که سال است قدری حالم بهتر شده. شب است و بچه‌های عزیزم خسرو و شیرین مرا سرگرم کردند. آقای بهاری هم حضور داشتند. موقع را مغتنم شمرده غزلی از حافظ در بیداد و آهنگ بختیاری خوندم. برای یاد بود اگر نقصانی مشاهده شود همانا ضعف مزاج بوده. امیدوارم در گوش صاحب دلم مطبوع افتد.
So that is the other one is the other recording of Adib again, the same singer, and it is accompanied by tuned piano, Mortaza Khan Mahjoubi. That was one of the. There are more players, but he's the more significant one. He actually tunes his piano to Iranian maqams, and it sounds amazing. And I think that's the attitude that we need to kind of follow. Just make it yours. Use the instrument, but make it sound like it's yours. That's important. I think for that reason, I really like that recording. And it is accompanied by Varzande. I'm sure about Varzande. I'm not too sure about the tar player. I think the tar player is either Arslan Dargahi or Ibrahim Sarkhosh. I'm not sure. And the violin player, again, I'm not sure. I think it's Reza Mahjoubi.
Interesting. So, Araz Salek, I really thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. You have really given us a great exposure to yourself, to Persian music, to this art music, and to Labyrinth and the activities, and the music appreciation at the end. So, thank you very much again.
For sure, my pleasure, Fadel. I mean, I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to talk here. Thank you so much for talking to me, and yeah, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, and we will see you again soon.
For sure. Thank you.